spiral. So in this video, we're going to discuss a spiral model as a process model. So spiral model is risk driven. Why? A, it combines incremental iterative advantages and systematical control waterfall approach. Okay. So itong spiral model, okay, pinagsama-sama to no ng advantages of incremental and iterative development. Okay? At meron din kasamang waterfall model. Dun sa waterfall model, yung pagiging systematic and controlled approach. Okay? Yung waterfall model. So, the spiral model adapts a cyclic approach. Kaya siya spiral, paikot, diba? For incrementally growing a system's degree of definition and implementation. At the same time, okay, while decreasing its degree of risk. Example, spiral diagram. Okay? As you can see, ayan yung example ng spiral diagram. In the spiral model, paano na-develop yung software? Okay? Software is developed using a series of iterations, okay? Where each iteration represents a loop. And kaya yung isang ikot, loop yan. Okay? So, a loop of the spiral, tapos, represent a piece of the overall software process. As you can see, each loop in the spiral is built into 4 sections. Okay? Yung ano yung mga first section na yan. Ito yung first section, second section, third section, fourth section. Okay? So, dito muna tayo. In the first section, okay, tawag dito is objective setting. Yan. Objectives. So, in the objective setting, yan, here the objectives of the piece are defined. Okay, constraint, risk, and corresponding strategies are identified and a detailed plan is created. Yun yung ginagawa dito sa first phase, which is the objective setting. Dito naman sa upper right, which is the second section, this is called the risk assessment and reduction section. Okay, ang ginagawa dito, a detailed analysis is carried out for each of the risks identified in the objective setting. So, a-analyze, yan, i-analyze, kaya puro risk analysis dyan, dito sa mga risks na na-identify dito sa first section, which is the objective section. Again, the second section is what we called risk assessment and reduction section. Ito yon. Ito yon, yung part na yan. Okay? For example, okay, example tayo, if in the objective setting phase, okay, a risk was identified that some requirements are not clearly defined or understood. Hindi masyadong naintindihan. So, in this section, ang gagawin sa risk analysis is prototype. Kaya makita nyo, may prototype dyan. Prototype could be built para maging malinaw yung hindi naging malinaw na requirements. Okay, or na objective dito sa first section. So, after having the risk resolved in the second section, in the third section, dito sa lower right, okay, ito yung third section, ang tawag dito is development and validation section. Okay? So, develop and validation. Dito, nagte-take place yung development and binavalidate yung result. It's important to notice that the spiral model does not mandate any specific development model. Okay? Dito kasi, mo pipiliin kung anong development model mo. Okay, sa spiral model, malaya ka kung anong development model yung pipiliin mo. Okay? Any model can be used based on the problem on hand. It could be waterfall, prototyping, agile, or any other method. And in the final stage or section, okay, ito na yung planning section, lower left. The customer sees the result. Kita na dito ni customer yung result. Okay? Marireview niya na. Tapos, makapag-decide na siya. A decision is then taken whether another loop or iteration of the spiral is needed. Okay, yun yun. Kaya, yung spiral again, okay, series of iterations yan. No? Pinagsamang iteration, tapos, saka may waterfall. Okay? Because of the systematic and controlled approach. Yun yung spiral. So, paano binabasa yung spiral diagram? So, isa-isain ulit natin para mas maging malinaw. Okay, let's take some time to examine how to read the spiral diagram. Okay, we'll make the previous discussion around the fourth section clearer para mas maging malinaw yung fourth section. Again, in the first loop, ayan yan. Ang tawag dyan is objective section. Okay, setting objectives. Okay, we define the objectives of the iteration in the section 1. And in section 2, we do risk analysis. This could lead to building a prototype, diba? Or kung ano man yung magiging solution, okay, to solve the risk identified in the section 1. So, prototype yung napili in this example. In the third section, okay, no development is done yet, but we could set the operations and maintenance scenarios in parameters. Kaya makita nyo, meron na dyan conception of operation. And in section 4, we set the requirements. Ayan. Dito natin sa set yung requirements na. So, pupunta na tayo sa second loop. Yun na yun, second loop na. So, again, we set the objectives in section 1. Then, in section 2, once again, we do risk analysis, which again could lead to another prototype development to mitigate risk. In section 3, we start analyzing and validating requirements or the validation of requirements. Remember that in the previous loop, we set the requirements plan. Dito, we analyze now. We start the analyzing and validation requirements. Okay, validating requirements. Then in section 4, we now create the development plan. Okay, kasunod, development plan. Ito yon. Then, papasok na tayo sa third loop. Objective session. Again, in section 1, more risk analysis and prototyping in risk in section 2. Then, in the section 3, we move into the design and design verification. And design and verification. Okay? And then, in the final loop, one final time, and final loop, dito muna sa fourth section, okay, we set the detailed integration and test plan. Ayan, integration and test plan. Diba, almost we're done in the final loop. Ito na, final loop na, one final time. Iikot ulit yan. Objectives ulit sa section 1. Risk analysis ulit sa section 2. And dito na yung papasok yung development methodology of choice. Okay? We go into the detail dun sa design, coding, and testing in section 3. And we're done with the cycle or we're done with the loop. Okay? So, ano ba yung mga pros and cons? At saan ginagamit yung spiral? Okay? So, despite our model, okay, explicit recognition dun sa mga risks, okay, makes it suitable for large and complex projects. So, doon siya maganda gamitin for large and complex projects. Spiral along with RUP. Yung RUP, di-discuss natin yan on the other videos, lesson video. Okay? RUP and spiral are the only models to have such explicit risk recognition. Kaya, yun yung ginagamit. The model also adapts the incremental delivery. So, customers will always be involved in each iteration. Kaya, incremental delivery siya. Okay? Yung customers, laging involved dyan sa iteration. Para ma-review niya lagi yung result. At makatulong siya dun sa risk assessment. Okay? Ganun yung ikot na nangyayari. Also, the model uses prototyping as well. Diba? Gumagamit din siya ng prototyping. Why? Diba? Yung prototyping, para ma-review agad nga ni customer, okay? So, we use prototyping here as an effective risk reduction mechanism para mas makita agad, okay, kung ano yung requirements na kulang at ma-review agad ni customer. So, as you saw, prototypes are not one-time activity here. Pwede yan sa bawat ikot meron. So, instead, they are used at various stages of the product evolution. Okay, sa bawat ikot. The spiral model is complex to manage. Yun yung isang consequence niya, no? Typically incurs high cost. Yan. Magastos din yan. Why? Typically incurs high cost because of its explicit focus on risk analysis and consequently prototype development. So this makes the Spiral model most appropriate for large and complex projects. So dun siya pinakabagay, pero less so for smaller projects. Okay? So kung smaller projects yan, okay, hindi siya advisable gamitin. Okay? For agility is a key factor pagka smaller projects. So the next process model we're going to discuss is agile method.